Welcome everyone, and State Senator Brian Strickland is joining us today. I have the chairman of our board, Christy Chewning, with us, and we're just going to have a quick conversation with Senator Strickland and find out what secrets he knows are happening at the Capitol right now, and get some insight for the employer community in Henry County. We are planning on doing these weekly and inviting different members of the Henry County delegation to join us throughout the legislative session this year and find out where we need to be involved, what we need to be watching out for. So Senator Strickland, first, thanks for joining us. And second, congratulations on the chairmanship appointment to the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. And Christy, good to see you as well. Appreciate you guys doing this. I'm happy you alluded to the appointment. I found out yesterday I'll be the new chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. And so I have people that are congratulating me, also giving me condolences. It's a very busy committee, and so it's a new role for me, but I'm excited about it. I think it's hopefully a role I'm well suited for, and I can hopefully do a lot of good things for our state, and also, of course, look out for the folks down our way here in Henry County as well.
Oh, I think I've in the year and a half or so that I've been here, I've always been amazed and excited to see the work that you do and the great work that the delegation does and how you all come together from Southern Crescent to different things for the schools and that. And so I want to thank you all for that work. Let's start a little bit if we can. I know it's only 3 days into the session, but what are some of the highlights that you see that we might be looking at for this legislative session? Yeah,
and the biggest thing for us right now is trying to figure out how to adjust, just like we've all done in our different capacities throughout 2020. As we go into 2021, it's still the same right now with COVID. We're seeing cases at an all-time high daily now. And so we are trying to figure out how to fulfill our constitutional duty, of course, of convening as we're required by our Constitution to do on a certain date, which was this past Monday, and do our work. And the one thing we're required to do is to pass a budget. And we start by looking at last year's budget, we're making adjustments and getting into what we call the big budget for the next term. And so we, right now, most of the attention has gone to trying to figure out how to do this where we can all function. And so we're doing testing. As one thing we've learned over the last year, the key to staying ahead of COVID is good testing. And obviously, we were not good, and we being anyone in the world really was not good at this initially. We've gotten better at testing. And now what we're doing as legislators, every Monday morning, before we go to the Capitol, as we walk into the Capitol, we all go take a COVID test, and we get our results by that evening. And then every Thursday, we all take another COVID test. Tomorrow morning, I'll take, and we get our results that evening. And we're hoping we can navigate this. And the goal, more than anything, now I'm living close by, I drive back and forth every evening. But for most of my colleagues, we're trying to make sure that if they do get sick, they don't take the virus and further spread it throughout our state from Atlanta. And so the Thursday test accomplishes that, hopefully. And then the Monday test will tell us if we came back to the Capitol with it, obviously. And so trying to navigate that's been a big thing. And we've had some hiccups this week. We luckily have only had a few positive tests initially, but it led to our majority leader in the Senate not being present the last 2 days because he tested positive Monday. And so that has taken a lot of the attention. Honestly, it's just trying to figure out how to adjust to that. And so it's been a quiet first few days. But the biggest thing I would anticipate, first off, of course, is the budget. Everyone knows, of course, the business community especially knows what a hit the COVID was for us in 2020 financially, setting aside the health side of things. And so we've watched month after month revenues continue to increase in Georgia. Georgia has outperformed nationally other states. And done extremely well in comparison to other states and deal with COVID. And so with all that comes additional revenue, hopefully, for us to restore a lot of the cuts we saw in last year's budget. And so my hope and all of our hopes, I think, on both sides of the aisle in the House and Senate, as we go into next week, we'll start budget hearings. Our goal is hopefully we can get a budget from the governor that restores a lot of our cuts from last year, especially big things like our public education, mental health services. So many areas were hit so hard. When you have a budget, you're having to cut this drastically. Nobody was immune from that. And so we're hopeful we can restore a lot of these cuts. And as we get more money back in, put it where it needs to go first as we continue to recover from COVID. So that's going to get most of the attention, I think, at least initially up there.
Wow. Okay. Well, I was going to do a speed round where we just threw out topics, but you covered most of them in that response. So
We can wrap this up now, right now.
let me do one more question for you, and it's one that we addressed last year, so it's not a new topic. I'm going to ask you about gaming and specifically the sports betting, because we're hearing a lot about that. What do you see with that? And then I'm going to ask Christy to ask a couple of her questions. So just a little bit of an update maybe on where we stand with that.
Yeah, and so I'm not aware of any new bills that have been dropped yet, but you kind of had the issue of gaming in particular, and separated from, you have sports betting, you have, of course, betting overall online, and you get into casino gambling. And so they obviously, some people talk about them all in one category, but they're separate items, of course. It seems like previously there was a little bit more of an opportunity to pursue gaming overall versus getting into the casino gambling yet. But I think it's a new session. One of the exciting things, as y'all know, we go on 2-year terms. And so this is truly a brand new, fresh start with 2021. And so I'm hopeful that we can dive into those issues and look at a way to pursue those things that works for our state. Where it gets complicated when it gets into casino gambling, of course, is the whole mechanism for licensing. You have some people that are just opposed to it all the way around, but most of the opposition comes from how you do it. But I think the sports betting is a little bit simpler, obviously, in setting that up. And so I would anticipate that being something you'll probably hear a lot about in 2021.
Okay. All right. Well, we look forward to continuing that conversation with you around that, because I know when we first talked about it, and I think you and I had talked about it a bit, but when we first talked about it in Henry County, there was a great deal of interest from the residents just looking for key employment opportunities without having to travel very far. So I think that there's a number of opportunities of wins around it.
Yes.
But we'll patiently sit back and wait for the appropriate time. So I appreciate that answer, sir. Christy.
Sure. Let's talk about Henry County's favorite topic, and let's talk about transportation for just a minute. With that, just, what do you see coming down the pipe for Henry County as far as transportation, and maybe get into a little bit of freight and infrastructure as you talk about that as well.
Yeah, and obviously we talk about transportation. For us, you can't help but talk about freight and infrastructure, because that's our big challenge. We can build roads everywhere, but unless we can handle our truck traffic that continues to grow and will continue to grow, we're going to continue to see bottlenecks in our county. Just so everybody's aware that we don't get to vote, of course, individual projects for DOT. We put money into a big bucket, and that gets divided up. And so you have a joint effort, though, that's led usually by our locals, being our local cities and our counties, our county, of course, here, coming to DOT with DOT board members by the congressional districts and trying to lobby for certain projects. And Henry County, I think in the past, most would agree, didn't always do a good job of coming together as one voice. You would have delegation maybe pushing for one thing, you'd have the cities doing something over here, you have people having regional fights amongst the county. I think that we've come a long way on that, and now I think you see us doing a lot better job of speaking with one voice, and I would encourage us to continue to do that. And that one voice, including all of our cities together and our county and our entire delegation. And that allows us to make a better lobbying effort to get the funds at the state level for certain projects. Now, that has led to a lot of projects moving forward in our county. These things, of course, take forever. You have all the approval that goes into the design work, the land acquisitions. Whenever a project gets going, it's always years before it gets finished. And by the time it gets finished, we're waiting for another lane to get open, right? And so we just saw that recently with the one-way pairs in McDonough that started before I was around in office. And we finally got to see the cones come down for that in the last few weeks. And so we have a lot of good projects moving forward. But for us in particular, I'm excited about the efforts at the state level to deal with truck traffic. We have so many warehouses in our county that are already there. We have more that are going to continue to come to our county, whether people want them or not, is something that we're good at. And the positive side of this, to me, what we've seen recently is a push to do more manufacturing in these warehouses. And so we're not just having a small number of jobs for dealing with products that we're storing and moving, but we're having true manufacturing jobs, so advanced manufacturing. And that to me, I've said all along, and others in our community have said, and our chamber has led on this, that if we start getting the manufacturing here, if you can store your good here, you can manufacture your good here. That leads to another level of jobs for our community, and it's a good thing for us. And so knowing that is here already and continues to grow, we have the effort by DOT to deal with the new truck lanes on 75. And so as y'all are aware, that process is underway as we look at the concept for that. And you also have, many of y'all been involved for a long time in dealing with the new interchange on Bethlehem Road. And I'm happy to see that project moving forward. I know that it's been controversial at certain levels. I'm happy to see the Board of Commissioners on board moving that project forward, because that, with the truck lanes mixing with that in particular, is a way to funnel a lot of the traffic we already have and what's coming to one new interchange. In doing all that, it'll help alleviate one of the big challenges we have locally of, as soon as the interstate clogs up, all the trucks start getting on our side roads, right? Our highways. Some of these are US highways like 23, of course, and state highways, and we can't keep the trucks off the roads. You can't blame them for wanting to get around a wreck on the interstate or get around traffic. And so providing a way to get them on and off the interstate and get through our county faster will naturally help on these side roads. And so I know it's a long answer to the question you had, but you're going to continue to see, hopefully, us working together to continue to push more projects that are priority for us here locally, especially things like Highway 155, Highway 42, those state highways we have as far as at the state level. And then from a policy standpoint, I've got to give some credit to the House of Representatives. We don't like to do that in the Senate side. And also our Chairman of Transportation in the Senate, Brandon Beach, has worked on this too. They've come together to look at freight and the challenges we have as a state with that overall logistics. And one of the big challenges we've explored in this is the issue of truck parking. And so you're going to see an effort this session moving forward with some policies to help alleviate some of the concerns that we see, not just with the traffic, but the indirect side of things, where these trucks park, where they go in our communities as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those interests in solving that problem that both the General Assembly and the business community support. So I look forward to working with you on some of those solutions. So thank you.
Yeah.
Let me ask, I know that there's been conversation, and I don't know if there's anything new to add to it, but I'm going to put the election reform conversation out there just because it's been such a hot topic for the last several weeks, and what it has in essence fragmented the party. Is there any update on conversations around what that might look like?
Yeah, and of course, these were conversations we were having before the election in November, which is why you had the whole consent order done to start with by Secretary of State that was so controversial, that's now so controversial, has been since November, and dealing with absentee ballots. I think if you set aside any politics, everybody would agree that our current system we have in place is not set up for the volume of absentee ballots that we now have.
Yeah.
Now, COVID led to that. But I think we're naive to think that we're not continuing to see people vote that way, because it's an easier way to vote. And whether COVID's rising or not, it's especially a great way to vote if you are staying somewhere else. And if you're a student, for example, you're away from home, or if you're, of course, you're military, or if you're elderly, or just don't want to be exposed or stand in line to vote. And so I think absentees are still the way of the future. And so what I hope you're going to see is, setting aside all the different things we could do with this, is a strengthening of the absentee ballot system. Currently, we have a portal where you can go online using an ID and request a ballot. That's the best way to get a ballot, because you can verify that the person requesting it is there getting it. It goes right to address their request, and then it gets submitted from there. But when you just use a signature to request a ballot, and that is just not the best way to handle, in my opinion, the volume of ballots that we have, because you get into how you verify that. You rely on all the different counties run the local elections to figure out how to verify all these signatures. And so what I'm hopefully you're going to see is a way to add additional verification to the ballots while not making it harder to vote. Nobody, I don't think, should support any efforts that makes it harder to vote, but we all should support efforts that makes it where you know that the votes are verified. Because what we've seen the last couple months, if nothing else, is that one person can say an election was stolen. One person can make allegations about an election, no matter what the facts are. And it is so difficult with a secret ballot, as it should be, that's separated from an envelope, that's based on a signature. It's so difficult to go back and audit that and to go and truly disprove an allegation, right? It's the opposite of how things work in a court. It's like the burden gets shifted to proving that an election was not fraudulent. And everybody deserves to trust the system. You should know that when you cast your ballot, no matter how you do it, your vote counted. And so there'll be a lot of ideas on this, but I think most of them are going to center around what I just said and making it where we can have an extra layer of verification on absentees. Some people may want to eliminate absentees altogether. I know I don't support that. I don't think that's going to get majority support anywhere, but I think what we probably could agree on is just strengthening that process.
I appreciate that. I think that does sound fair. I think, you know, as you said, the concern, or at least as I hear you say, my concern is, you know, if we were to eliminate that, that means that in this case, we would have had lines forever on election day. Yeah. And that's not fair either, I don't believe, to force anybody that's interested in voting, that's supporting that system, and then has to stand in line for 12 hours or whatever to cast their vote. That seems to be a little burdensome as well. Right. Thank you for that. Christy, I'm going to jump over. There's a chat question, I believe, coming up. If you have one, I'm going to double check this and I'll come back to you all.
Sure. Senator Strickland, is there anything that you are working on personally that you plan to present during this session?
Yeah, and so as of yesterday, my role at the Capitol has changed with chairing this committee. And so I know for the outside looking in, it's a committee, but in the Senate, we have one judiciary committee that considers all bills that deal with our courts, deal with constitutional issues, with anything just legal, which is a lot of what we do goes through one committee. And so most of my time will be spent managing that and the volume of bills we'll have to deal with. That said, there are some things that are going to hopefully go in front of that committee that I know I support, whether I'm carrying individually or supporting through a committee. And some of that centers around continuing criminal justice reform in our state. You talk about business, and we're once again the #1 state in which to do business. At least we were for last year. Hopefully that continues this year too. We like to brag about that. It's a chamber slogan we all like to use too. And part of that is the regulatory environment, the business environment you see overall, the tax structure, I mean, all the things that works well about our economy. But there's another step in that I think we all see as well, and that's having a justice system that works for everybody. And Georgia has led on that for years. And we've come so far year after year, going back to Governor Nathan Deal, what he ran on and what the reforms that he brought that were used as model legislation at the federal level. And so in all that, one bill I had a few years ago dealt with reforming our probation system. And we have a way through a law a couple of years back where people can get termination of probation. It basically is stopping the idea of just leaving people on probation, not even reporting. They're paying fees though, and if they get in any sort of trouble at all, it gets revoked, and it keeps this cycle going of keeping somebody in the justice system. And obviously disproportionately hurts poor people too, with less access to funds. Well, one of the things we learned the last couple of years is Georgia still has, if not one of the top largest per capita populations of people on probation. It's not because more crimes are committed here. It's that the laws we passed previously are not being utilized. And so I think you'll see an effort to do a probation reform once again, hopefully this year in the state Senate. You're also hopefully going to see something else I was working on last year is reforming our citizens arrest law. We've seen it play out when someone tries to at least argue they're using the current citizens arrest law and all that, what happened in Brunswick last year. And all that, and by the way, that was not justified by our current laws, and I'm confident that a jury will say the same thing. But what I learned and others learned is the old law in the books is like the Wild Wild West and is not applicable today. It doesn't make sense today. So you'll see us, I think, reform our citizens arrest laws this session as well. And one of the things that I hope that my committee will lead on is more mental health reform. a big part of this is budgetary things. And we've started the process of this. And our chief judge in Henry County, Judge Amaro, has led the effort through Superior Court Judges Council as well on suggesting reforms to our mental health system that we have now, which is honestly a very poor system. We're basically relying on our prisons to be mental health hospitals, and it's not how it's supposed to be set up. And so I think you're going to see some recommendations that are led from Judge Amaro to us, to our committee, to move forward on some more reforms to help with mental health in our state. Also hopeful that you'll see our governor continue to put money into certain programs to reform mental health, the way we deal with mental health in our state as well.
Yeah, I especially during this COVID pandemic, I'm seeing a lot of need for mental health, and not in the ways that we've watched it for years, but now it's even more pervasive from those of us that might never have reached out for that assistance. I'm going to, our good friend Sherry Matthews has a question that she posted here, so I'm gonna preface it with that. She wrote, vaccination scheduling through the Department of Public Health has been challenging. Will there be additional resources allocated to the DPH to assist in this area?
I hope so. I don't know the answer to that yet. I know that the governor had a press conference yesterday dealing directly with that. I'll say this, I'm concerned that nationally we have so many vaccines available that aren't getting to people. And I'm even more concerned that Georgia has one of the biggest challenges we see with that right now. And so it's not acceptable the way we're currently rolling this out. And so I know I joined with me and my colleagues and the governor in trying to get to the bottom of what is the holdup and getting access to this. And once again, kind of like elections, it's typically best to have local control on things. It's versus a one size fits all model from DC or Atlanta. It's better to let local health departments in the situation administer a vaccine, and private entities as well, of course, like Piedmont. But we've got to now dive in and see what the holdup is and make sure we're getting access to the vaccine as quickly as possible. And so I don't know yet as far as from a funding standpoint what additional money we put in, but it's really an immediate thing that has to be addressed right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Here's an interesting question, and it's something I don't know. When I get ornery, I start debating this with family and friends. But Alethea Barnes wrote, "Is it possible to eventually vote via virtual as Australia does?" My argument is always that, we pay our taxes, we do the census, there's all these other things that, that we do online and electronically, and that, can we get to that point with this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it looks like. I agree. It seems like everything else we've done in life, we moved on from the old way of doing things by hand. And the new voting machines have gotten a lot of pushback from all sides. But what the voting machines really did was create the paper ballot. Your ballot, when you vote, is a paper ballot with the printed names of who you voted for on it. And when you do an audit or a recount, you actually use that printed ballot to do that. And so we've really gone a little bit in some ways backwards in technology in Georgia by going back to a paper ballot. And that was something most people wanted when we look at the new machines. So I think, yes, eventually we're going to have to go to something more virtual. And when I started talking about absentees, I mentioned the system. I think it was started by our current Secretary of State, Robert Rathensberger. I believe this is something he piloted. But the idea that he currently has that portal where you can go online and I haven't done it myself, but I believe what you do is you use an ID number from your license. I think that's how it works. And you get your ballot that way. That's getting closer to it right there, the way you can go online and get your paper ballot. But the biggest concern, obviously, if you have a breach at a bank or you have a breach with your credit card, we've all dealt with stuff like that. And there's ways to address that. But you've got to figure out, if you're going to go virtual, how to truly avoid a breach that overthrows an election. I mean, we've seen the challenges of an election in the last 2 months, what we've all gone through, and what we saw especially kind of come to a head last week in Washington, D.C. And what you have to be careful of is not so much even internally, but what foreign governments could do if you have a completely online system. So I guess to answer your question directly, we should look at what Australia has done, because if I don't know if that's true, but if they have done it virtually down there and that's how they're doing it, then maybe there is a way we can move towards that. So we'll see. My concern is always going to be to make sure we have a system that can be audited. Again, they can be recounted and audited, because that people have to have faith in what we're doing. And there are elections that are literally decided by a couple of votes. And so we have to make sure every system we have, we can have faith in.
No, I agree. I appreciate that. I think we all want transparency and the fact that it's secure. I think as we sit and talk about it, we're just trying to figure out ways that make it a little bit easier on the electorate to be able to voice their vote. So I've got one here from Patrick McHugh, who prefaces with, I've already spoken to you about this, but as more and more restaurants are closing and forced to use third-party delivery services in that, are there things that we can do that can regulate them so that it's not a gouge? Because I know that at times it did really spike for these restaurants that had to opt in for these third-party delivery services. And are there things that we can look at from a look at in the dome that we can come back and support some of these smaller businesses that are still searching for viability?
Yeah, and Patrick brings up a good point. This came up last year. I think it came up, Patrick, when we first started dealing with COVID, and we saw a lot of our small businesses that didn't previously use these online ordering systems, Uber Eats, Grubhub, you can tell I use them, DoorDash, who didn't use those. Like, I've got 2 little kids. Those are, before COVID, they were great for us at home too, without having to go out. And so there's this balancing act that you're going to see a debate play out on this issue, for example, of the free market and letting these companies go and do individual contracts with certain businesses, versus there's always a point, though, where you have to have some regulation step in to create an equal balance, if you will, because restaurants have so many regulations already underneath that they have to deal with. And then you have companies that come in. And one of the things that I've heard complaints about is what the price is charged to you by the company and how they regulate that. And when you have a few people that do all the business too, it creates potential for monopoly in that too. And so I think that is an issue that you'll see us look at. We've had to look at similar stuff in the past in dealing with Uber overall in Georgia compared to taxi industry. And so as you see regulated industries shift and new companies come in, I think you probably will see some legislation dealing with that at some point.
All right. Well, thank you. It's unfortunate we're almost up in time, because I think we could get into a whole discussion around First Amendment rights too, and what we're hearing out there around when you look at Apple and Google and that. But we only asked for a half an hour, so I'm not going to get you started on that. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for all of your work and all of the Henry County delegation's work. Yes, to keep Georgia the #1 state to do business, but that we were pretty good around here in Henry County during this pandemic. And I think that has a lot to do with all of the leadership that we have at all the different levels working together and making sure that we're all pulling together the same direction. So thank you, Christy. Thank you. I don't know if you have any closing words you'd like to make, but I just want to thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Strickland. And just if you need anything from the Henry County Chamber of Commerce, let us know.
All right, thank y'all so much. Can I say one thing at the end?
Yes, sir.
In case we go over time a little bit. I just want to say how encouraged I am right now to be a Henry County citizen. I grew up here. I've now lived here 37 years. And so I think that 2021 moving on is the best time ever for our county. I love the growth that we've had. I love the industry that we have. It brings lots of challenges, but we have one of the best places to live in Georgia, one of the best states in our country. So many opportunities here, and so I'm excited about our future. And let me just say, you have a very, very strong delegation. There's just 2 of us in the Senate, Emmanuel Jones and I in the Senate. I'm proud of our senators, leadership we have here, but our House also has a very strong delegation. So you can trust that we're on the same page, we're working together. We'll disagree at times over stuff, but on the big stuff, we're together. And I think you'll see us working together with our cities and our county and with you guys and the work you're doing. If we stick together, we can go to the next level for Henry County. And so don't let all the circumstances of today and, of course, all the politics that you see playing out divide us anymore. Let's move forward as a county.
Well said. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All the best to you and your family, and I hope you all stay safe and well. And thank you for all of your service to the residents and the employers of Henry County. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And be sure to tune in next week, and we'll have another one of our members of the Henry County delegation talking to us some more about what's going on in Atlanta. So thank you. Have a great afternoon.